So what I usually do in these videos is I just sit here with my face unshinied and my eyebrows on, and I pretend that I just woke up with that, like that. But it's not true. I just put it all on for the video, even though it's like 8 o'clock at night, and I'm going to have a shower immediately after this and wash it all off again. But it looks good for the video, and I'm probably gonna fuck this up. I can't really see that well, but it's fine. We're just gonna go with it. This is empty, and that's not the hand I usually do it with. And I also have this thing, which you definitely will have got an Instagram ad about, because I've been getting Instagram ads about it. And in lockdown, I caved and bought one. And turns out it's pretty great. Does what it says it's gonna do. Only really good for little flyaways though, not if you've got a lot of them, because it's sticky. But anyway, now that my face is on, we can begin. Hi everyone, welcome to Things Lucy Reads. I'm Luce, and this is my January wrap-up video. In January I read 7 books, and the first book I'm going to talk about is The Companion by E. E. Ottoman, which is actually the second last book that I read. This is a book set in the 1890s in, I forget what part of the US, but it's set in the US. The protagonist is a trans woman, and she takes a job as a live-in companion for this author who's a little bit reclusive, doesn't have a lot of friends, but just, you know, doesn't want to be in the house by himself. So she takes up that job, and she meets his neighbor, who also happens to be his ex-lover. You find out that the main character is trans, the man that she's living with is trans, and his neighbor and ex-lover is also trans, and she starts relationships with both of them consensually, like they were all aware of what's happening, and then eventually it turns into a little threesome kind of situation. The main character and her companion were both writers, and then the neighbor has like a market garden and goes foraging in the forest and is a little more of like a hands-on kind of person. And I just really liked the slow development of their relationships with each other, and how they got to know each other, and how she was able to kind of bridge the gap between the two ex-lovers and guide them towards being friends and then back into something more. There was some discussion of neither of the characters went into town very often, and I think that the implication there was that people in town were transphobic. Victor got all of his groceries and everything that he could possibly need like delivered, and just basically didn't really leave his house at all. But for the most part, the story is completely confined to Victor's house and the neighboring farm and the forest that is in between them. And the main character originally came from New York City, talks a little bit about her experiences there, which she was kind of viewed there in the publishing scene as a little bit of a commodity, like a novelty, not so much a person. And so that's discussed as well in the book, but overall it's just a very soft, lovely, comforting read. I have disagreed with E. Ottoman books in the past. I talked about one in my December wrap-up, which I thought was universally terrible, and I said that I had one more by that author that I also that I owned that I also had to read, and this I actually have 2. I'm feeling better about the other one that I have now that I've read this one. There were still some issues with typos being present in the novel, and I mentioned in the last video that a lot of times he would use the wrong word in a sentence, like the one that didn't fit in the context. So like in this one, I specifically took note of it. Instead of saying just under the surface, he wrote just under the service. He's a self-published author, so I don't know how many other pairs of eyes are also on this work. It may just be him writing and editing his own work, which is fine, but a lot of things are falling through the gaps is my point. But this one on balance was much better than the ones I've read previously, and there were a lot of sex scenes. This book was incredibly steamy, oh my goodness. but there was no like cringy bedroom talk, for which I was so thankful. I'm still recovering from reading A Matter of Disagreement, and but this one was good. I really enjoyed it. I think I'm probably going to buy it in paperback because I just really liked it. It was very nice and very comforting and exactly what I needed at the time. And I gave it 4 stars, and I'm very excited to see what else E. Oderman writes in the future, because if they continue to be like this one, then I'm going to really like him. And then the next book I'll talk about is the other one that I also read in a digital format, which is The Cat Who Walked 1,000 Miles by Kij Johnson. This is a tour short. It was long for a tour short though, about 55 pages. I read it for the Buzzwordathon. It was the 5 W's, so who, what, when, where, and how. It's not a W, but whatever, we go with it. So this was about this cat who lived in this abandoned estate in Japan, and there's a fire in the city, and she loses track of all of the other cats that she lives in this courtyard with. She can't find any of them. Fire just keeps spreading and makes things unsafe, so she has to leave so she doesn't burn herself. And that begins a long journey during which she attempts to find the home of the first cat in her fudoki, which is like a family group, and also the oral history of this family group, which tells the stories of each cat in it and how they came to the fudoki, and you know what their achievement was and how they got their name. They have names like the cat who chased a dog, or the cat from the north, and the cat from the north was one of the earliest cats, and certainly the one that made the most impression on Small Cat, who is the main character. That's not her name, it's just a placeholder name. And so she decides to travel north to find the home of the cat from the north, and along the way she meets several different monks who are instrumental in her journey, and eventually she goes as far as the river goes, as far north as she can, and then comes back south and eventually finds a new home for herself. And on the course of this journey, she travels to Mount Fuji and climbs most of the way up, where she meets another monk, and she thinks that if she climbs all the way to the top of Mount Fuji, she'll be able to see where the cat from the north came from and also find her way back to her courtyard. It doesn't quite work out like that, but for the first part of the story, that's the driving force. It was just really nice and sort of unlike anything I've ever read before, and I'm really sad that you can't buy it as a paperback because I really want one as a paperback, but you know. Kij Johnson has another book called Fudoki, which I don't know if it specifically ties into this or if it's just the same general idea, but I kind of want to track down a copy and read it because I just was so enchanted by this short story. I thought it was fabulous, and I gave it 5 stars. Because it is a tour short, you can read it for free, and I will leave a link to that down below. If you do want to purchase it for yourself, it's like $1 something on Kindle, super cheap, but you can read it for free too. But I really liked it. The first book that I read this month was for my TBR glass. So more in-depth thoughts on the book will be in that video, which I will link up there, but it is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, which I adored, and I gave it 5 stars. It was just exactly the kind of soft, character-driven, found family, supportive, queer fantasy space thing that I wanted in my life, and I'm so glad that I finally read it, because I think I'm going to be as evangelical about this as everyone else is, because it was just absolutely fantastic. Hopefully this month I will be able to get to the sequel. If not, I'll just read it next month probably. Definitely this year though, I'm going to read all of this series because it has just grabbed me by the balls and will not let go. But I'm not mad about it. It's fabulous. And then the next book that I read, I gave 4 stars. Is the Mighty Nein Origins Jester Lavore comic, which was written by Sam Maggs, Laura Bailey, Matthew Mercer, Hunter Severn Bonyoun, Kathy Lee and Ariana Maher, and this is just a little bit of Jester's backstory. If you watched campaign 2, she tells this story of how her mother had this patron who was mean, and to embarrass him, Jester disguised herself as her mother, told him to go out on the balcony naked to meet her there, and then locked him out and stole his clothes. And so he was butt naked in front of the whole city. So like it was funny to see that happening, and there was a subplot with the traveler happening as well, and that was my favorite part of it because it was a part of the story that we didn't know yet. The other half, because I've seen all of campaign 2, like I already knew about it, and even though it was entertaining to see it laid out visually, I didn't leave this knowing any more about Jester than I already knew, and I was a little bit disappointed about that. But I feel like I now have a better idea of what to expect from the other comics as well. It was very cute. I enjoyed spending time with Jester and revisiting this world again, and I'm not mad that I bought it, but it just didn't give me anything I didn't already have, that's all. And then the next book I read was a solid 3 stars, and that is 7 Brief Lessons on Physics by Carlo Rovelli. This outlines in each one a certain theory of physics, a basic concept about the universe. So the first one is relativity, and then it's quanta, architecture of the cosmos, particles, grains of space, probability, time, and the heat of black holes, and then there's like a closing one as well. It was fine. I have a certain grasp of some of the more basic concepts, like I understand gravity, I understand relativity, I understand black holes in as much as they can be understood, and like probability and that kind of thing. But there was a lot in here that my brain just couldn't hold on to, and not because of, and I've said that a lot in videos, it wasn't that my cognitive ability is lower than average because of the whole thing that we're all going through, but because I just don't think this book did a very good job at explaining things. Like, it tries to be brief, but in being so brief, it makes itself too complex. Like, I think it would have benefited if each lesson was twice as long and in simpler language. It wasn't super heavy jargon, but there was enough jargon in here that made it like a slog. And I feel like if you really wanted to lay out the core theories of physics simply and basically, you could do it better than this. It was translated from Italian, which may have had some impact on this. Maybe in Italian it's a little less dense. I don't know, I don't read Italian. I was not very impressed or enlightened by this book. I think I either need to read it again or I need to read other books about the same theories in order to fully grasp what he was trying to say. And the other thing is that each lesson was about 10 pages long, and fully half of each lesson was taken up by the history of the theory, like who thought of it first, who first published it, who got the credit, how was it received by the scientific community at the time, which was interesting, but I didn't need it, and I could have done with a little more explanation. Anyway, the next book that I read was Halloween Party by Agatha Christie, which I've been reading since October. I started it on the 28th, did not finish it by Halloween. It was fine. When I posted about this on Instagram, I said that all of the characters that Poirot interviews say exactly the same ableist bullshit about mentally ill people as everyone else, using almost the exact same language. And then my friend Carolyn was like, that happens a lot with Christie's later books. I think it's just down to lazy writing. Everyone was convinced that the perpetrator of the murder was obviously someone with a mental illness. This is not the words that they use, but someone with a mental illness who had escaped from an institution, come to the village and randomly murdered a 13-year-old girl for no apparent reason. And the fact that the same words were used for every single interview, and you were just smacked in the face with this repeatedly, it made me think that this was going to be like a village-wide conspiracy, like everyone had had a part in it and they were all covering it up, and that using the same words for everyone was a clue to that. But no, it was just ableist. So this one only gets a 3 stars from me. I don't even know if I'm going to hold on to this copy because I just don't think I'm ever going to want to read it again. It was mediocre. The next book that I read, and also the last one for this video, which is good because this video is long. I started reading this one on the 14th of October and only finished it this month. It is 1500 Miles from the Sun by Johnny Garzavia. So this is about a boy called Jules who is in his last year of high school and considering where he's going to go in his future, and he's gay but he's not out. And then one night he goes to a party and he gets inadvisably drunk and comes out on Twitter, which means that his secret Twitter crush finds out that he's gay, and they start to DM each other, and then they become boyfriends. And that's Matt, and he's Vietnamese and he lives in California. And from there, Jules decides that he's going to, I think he was always planning to go to university in LA, but now that he knows that Matt is there and that they're having a little relationship, it makes him more determined to go. So it's his journey through finishing school, through applying for colleges and discovering which ones he gets into, and coming out to his family, which goes really well for some parts of it and then really terribly in other parts. His dad is physically and emotionally abusive whenever he thinks that Jules is doing anything even a little bit gay, and just constantly kind of reinforces the idea in Jules that being gay is lesser. And obviously when he comes out to his dad, it goes badly, and he doesn't even get the dignity of coming out to his dad on his own terms. It is taken away from him, but he does have a safe place to go, and his grandfather and his sister are both super supportive. His grandfather, like, I literally cried in that scene. I love a good fictional grandfather. Like, it just really got me in the heart and I adored it. And it's basically just a coming of age story, and I just appreciated it so much. And even though there are really heavy things happening in this book pretty much all the time, and Jules has a lot of uncertainty about his future, it is a very light-hearted book at its core. Like, Jules, for the most part, is just so funny and just has such a joy for life that really came through on the page. And even when things were tough, he always kind of came through it and trusted in his own strength, which I really, really appreciated. And I read this book because of Adriette Perpetual Pages, and I'm so grateful to them for putting it on my radar, because I am probably never going to shut up about this book. It was just wonderful, and I loved it, and I loved what we got to see of Matt's family as well. And I just loved everything about it. Please read this book, please, and let this enrich your life in the way that it enriched mine, because it was great. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of January. As always, if you've read any of these and you would like to let me know what you thought, feel free to do that. If you don't have anything specific to say but you just want to let me know that you were here, then leave me a sun emoji in the comments, or any other emoji that you feel like. If you're feeling a different one, leave me that one instead, that's fine. Yeah, that's all I have for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye for now.